Hello, good evening, everyone. Please confirm if you can hear me. All right, excellent. Great to see that we can all hear me. You are all welcome to today's class, the final class of our AI Now Bootcamp. Congratulations to you all. You've been here since the very first day of this class. And today is the last day of the class. It's been 8 wonderful weeks of learning alongside with you. And I hope it has been a wonderful experience for you as it has been for me. So today you should tell yourself, well done for your consistency, for your resilience, and for having an open mind to learning. So you should indeed, yes, clap for yourself and you should be proud of what you've been able to achieve in 8 weeks. All right. So I'll be doing a brief revision of everything we've done from the first week up to the 8th week, right? So you see how much, right, you've learned within this few weeks, right? I won't say few weeks because we already have 2 months, right? We've been doing this for the past 2 months. Yeah, compliment of the season to you too. Okay, so I'm sure if you look at your curriculum, you should be proud of yourself and be like, oh, I've done everything here. You've completed your assignment, done a lot of things, learned a lot of new things, right, in generative AI. So we began by learning about the foundations of generative AI, a very interesting class. We learned about different tools that each of us here we've been using to make our work better, right? We mentioned a lot, and then we also learned about a new tool, Notebook LM, and I'm sure most of us have been using it. And then we moved on to learn about Hugging Face, how to use Collab Notebook, and it was very interesting. Yeah. So if you were very scared then when we started using Collab Notebook, I'm sure you should be very proud of yourself now, right? With the confidence, right, that you have to navigate these tools. Okay, so we learned about creating tokens, right, on Hugging Face, learned how to use different models on Hugging Face, or we learned how to do question answering with different models, summarization, how to prompt, move on to prompting. We learned about future prompting, short chain of thoughts something, and I'm sure we can also remember that vividly. Right? In Hello, please confirm if you can hear me now. Yes, my apologies. I had network issues, but it's great to see that we can all hear me now. My screen is purple. Oh, my screen is blank. Okay, let me reshare my screen so that we can all see my screen. Let me reshare. Oh, my screen is still blank, even though, okay, yeah, I think my screen is up now. Yes. Please confirm if you can see my screen now. It's still purple at your end. Screen is up. Abubakar can see my screen. I think if you can't see my screen yet, then it might be your network. Let me confirm. If you can't see my screen. Okay, so everyone is saying it is blank. Let me reshare one more time. Okay, so I'm resharing again. Trying to reshare. Okay, my screen is still not up yet. Wow. Why is this happening? These technical issues on our last day of class. Okay, now please confirm if you can hear me. Great. So you can hear me very clearly. Excellent. And I've been sharing my screen for a while now, but I don't know why it's not showing up on your end. So I think it's a technical glitch. Confirm if you can see my screen now. Blank screen, purple screen. Great. Yeah, as I was saying, today is the last day of our class, and then you should definitely tell yourself congratulations. So, I'm sure most of us must have been thinking of the project that we want to work on. Thank you for telling me that. Apologies for the glitch earlier. So, as I was saying, a lot of us must have been thinking of the project that we want to work on. So let me see our responses in the chat. Tell me about the project you are thinking of working on at the end of this boot camp, and let's see the awesome ideas that you've thought about since we've been here from since the first week to the eighth week, right, of the boot camp. Forget about the screen now. We are just discussing about the project that you want to work on. We will go back to what we have on the screen soon, but and I'll zoom in when we get there. So tell me about the project you've been thinking of working on. So let's see, and the problem, right, it is going to solve. Here we come to the last class of, I want to change class. Oh, Adekola, are you trying to say you wanted to change from the Gen AI class to somewhere else, but you were not allowed? Well, congratulations. When is your project expected to be executed? I won't be able to answer that, but I'm sure our admin would be able to respond to that. Olufunmilola Martins, you can't see anything on the screen, just a purple screen. You can't see anything on the screen. There's something on the screen, right? I'm currently sharing my screen. So you'd want to check your network. Be sure about your network, right? And then you can change it to be sure that it's not from your end. Olajumoke, you've not made up your mind about your project now. Okay, well, if you've not made up your mind, that's also acceptable, but at least you should have something that you are thinking about, or a specific problem, right, that you want to solve. I'm saying this because today is our last day of the class, right? And if you want to work on any project, we can help you think about, what kind of way can you reframe it, right, for it to be better. So if you have any project idea, you can always drop it in the chat. All right, so I think most of us have not made up our minds on the project we want to work on. But if you have an idea, please endeavor to drop it in the chat so we can look at it together and then talk through it, right? Problem it would solve and then the value, right, it is going to bring. All right, so moving on. Yesterday we learned a lot about AI safety, measuring bias, and then the ethical design, right, when building AI applications. Okay, okay, I can see Philip response saying you would like to improve on the pigeon database. So you want to contribute to did we work on a pigeon database? You meant to say Yan GPT. Well, if there's a pigeon database, that's also a very great contribution, right? And I think you could also even write a research paper on that because you are giving us more data, right? So yes. You'll contact me later after the class for the project. Well, that won't be possible. Sorry, because that is what I'm saying. Today is the last day of the class. Let us discuss about whatever project you might have in mind. How long will the test be left open? I won't be able to answer that. Sorry, Oyewumi, but I'm sure our admin will be able to respond to that. You've been thinking of translation. Excellent. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and if you notice, even most project on translation, most fine-tuning and all, most of them are majorly Yoruba. So it will be very great, right? I'm sure if you check the one for Igbo, there would be, right? But they are not as much, right? So it will be great if you can fine-tune, right? You want to majorly fine-tune a model on curate your data sets and then do that. I'm sure you can learn more about fine-tuning on Hugging Face and then you'll be great to work on that. Great one, Olajumoke. Want to work on an AI assistant that can solve accounting problems. I like that. That means you would be making use of a reasoning model and maybe chain of thought prompting because we want to see how the model came about that answer that it is giving that accountant. I like that. And you can even maybe I don't know, put it in a chatbot and then make it show your its steps, right? The steps that it took to get to that response. Yeah. Winifred, you wish we did image generation. Well, there are models that you can go on Hugging Face, right, and then look for models, right, that can generate image, right. Just go to Hugging Face. You've been taught the basics, right, in this 8 weeks class. So you have everything you need. Just go to Hugging Face, look for that model, look at the model card, and look at how to load it, right, in your collab notebook, and you should be good on that. Oh, I can see Mikael saying you also want to work on tip LLM. Excellent. So it will be great. You can learn more about fine tuning also on Hugging Face, right? Just as I've said, you just have to create your data sets and then yeah, fine tune a base model. It will be great to do that. Abubakar, you have created a multilingual past question tutor, but you're having issue with the voice output. Wow, great one. I'm clapping for you, Abubakar. Great one. Yeah. Don't worry, if you're having issues with it, you can just like you've been taught, this is a generative AI class, right? From week 1 to week 8, right? So you can just go to any LLM of your choice. I would recommend, right, type in your prompt, the issues you're having, and look at the solutions, right, that we recommend to you. You can also check out GPT, right, and then also just use Google to see what other people have done in that regard. But great one, Abubakar. Christopher, you want to develop an interpreter for Chinese to Hausa. Wow, Do you understand Chinese and do you understand Hausa? Why would you want to develop an interpreter for that? But that's a great thought. Excellent. Emmanuel, what's my name on LinkedIn again? My name is Adejumobi Joshua. Fadeke, you want to work on video generation? Yeah, great one. You can do that, of course. Excellent. You can work on the video generation as a project and say you did this, and that to generate this video, and this is the problem it solves, and this is the value, right, that it brings. I can see Oyekule Taiwo says an AI assistant for veterinarians guiding them in making accurate diagnosis, treatment protocols, and management approaches. Excellent. So I'm featuring that chatbot is going to have lots of functionalities, right? Accurate diagnosis. Diagnosis. I'm sure when you were being taught applications of Gen AI in healthcare, right, you were taught some things that um your chatbot should not say, right, to the patient because they can never be 100% accurate, right? So they are not trying to replace the a doctor, right? They are just trying to stand in gap and tell the patients maybe the first aid things to do before going to the hospital. So the person body is in charge of your child but always still has to go to the hospital, right? So accurate treatment protocols, no, right? No, right? You can say, oh, this might be what is wrong with you, and then say you have to go to the hospital, direct them to the hospital, or maybe say have a link for them to speak to a doctor, right? Have a link for them to speak to a doctor. That would also be great. But treatment protocols, you say, oh, it is the AI that said I should use this, or the AI said I should use paracetamol, or the AI said I should use this with this. No. All right. So, Oyewumi, you're thinking of how one can solve simple errors on resolving phone bugs. Phone bugs. So, which type of bugs, right, on phone? Let's say maybe I don't know. What kind of errors are you thinking of? What kind of bugs are you thinking of? Right? An AI assistant for lesson planning as a teacher. Well done. Yeah, I like that. An AI assistant for lesson planning as a teacher. And then you can even have it hosted right on Hugging Face Spaces, or you could be more, let's say, more ambitious, right? Maybe deploy it on something like Render, right? And have even your specialized front end, right? But if you want to do something simple, right, you just use your Gradio, right? And then Hugging Face Spaces. Great one. You want to generate yours on sport analysis. So how would that look like, Christian? How would that look like? Because one thing you should know, right, that before we moved on to generative AI, we said AI that can what generate new things, right, new patterns. We also have discriminative models, right? Discriminative models are models that will give them some kind of data, and then they predict that, oh, this is supposed to be this is supposed to be that, right? And before we even have prediction with discriminative models, right, we have normal things like Excel, that when you put in a data, you can run your analysis manually there. So how what are you thinking about? Tell me, Christian. Are you like thinking of, oh, the user puts in an Excel sheet and then the AI generates the analysis maybe as a dashboard, or what are your thoughts? Yeah, let me know. Philip, you want to work on an AI assistant for solving procurement problem. So I think that that is your domain, right? So what type of problem would you want to solve, right, in procurement? How What kind of problem, right? Yeah, would you want to solve in procurement? Femi Bello, you want to look into hospitality, how to get complaint from clients and guests. I like that. I like that. Do you know something? You want to look into hospitality and then provide solution for a quick response. So for your kind of thing that you want to build now, Femi Bello, you would want to definitely use RAG, right? You could have like a your own knowledge base of frequent questions that people have always asked, right? And then have it embedded in a vector database, right? Then in your chatbot, when the user asks a question, right, that is known, that has been seen before, right, it can easily provide a response. But then if the question is custom and has never been encountered before, then it can now refer the person to a real person, right, in your organization. So that's a great one. Well done. Abara Christian is saying you would like to work on, yeah, you said sport analysis, and I think, yeah, you should be able to answer sport related questions. Well, I'm not a person that is too grounded in sports, so I might not be able to help. So, but if you say you should be able to answer sport related question, maybe most recent sports related questions, maybe then you want to plug it, you want to maybe yeah, do something like brag also, maybe connect it to a website, right, that has information, right, about sports, and then maybe even historical information. So that is not an analysis, right, Christian? If it is answering sports related questions, that means it's not an analysis, right? It's basically a chatbot, right? But you can just connect it maybe to a website that has the different information about sport, maybe things that have even occurred in the past, right? Then it will be able to answer different questions. Excellent. You want to use AI as an assistant social media manager. Any advice or suggestions? Okay, so you are an assistant social media manager. Well, it could help in, let's say, content that you want to generate. Oh, yeah, content that you want to generate for whatever platform you are managing, or whatever content you want to put on the platform you are managing for an organization, if I'm getting you correctly, right? So basically, not really a social media manager, but it could be helpful in content creation, both text, images, videos, just as you've been taught a lot in this class. General problems associated with procurement. That's broad, Philip. That's very, very broad. So if I were you, I would think of, fine, maybe I'll first start with a small set of problems, right, that I know that are very um a small set of problems that I know that are very, people in procurement would definitely encounter, right? If I were you, I'll first start with a small set of problems. Then after starting with that, you can now scale, right, later. So you can start little and then scale later. All right. I should type out my LinkedIn name. All right, I'll type it. I'm coming. Simon, you're thinking of developing AI to assist financial market analysis and investment. So it will tell me something, something, something to invest. This is the best thing to invest in. This is the best thing to not invest in. All right, excellent. But you would want to first think of where you are going to get data, right? Because you need data. Yeah, you need data, right? That you would embed, right, with your model. So data is very, very important. Godwin, you want to develop a tax. Excellent. I like that because most people don't even know about the idea, right? They don't know about how to understand this new tax regulation, right? So that's great one. You could also make sure all these projects that we are discussing about, when you are done with them, make sure you share them right on LinkedIn, and we'll clap for you and congratulate you, right? Yeah. So excellent one, Godwin. Hmm. Ola is saying you have the idea of creating a POS software with efficient document management. Hope it's not the POS that me I'm thinking. What do you mean by your own POS? So different abbreviations can have lots of meanings. So what would you mean by your own POS? But I love the part for effective document management. That looks great. What do you mean by your own POS? Okay, Francis, Q&A and translation app with speech to text and text to speech. Hey, this is a lot though. You want to do question and answer, and then the okay, let me picture it as an app, right? It's going to have question and answer, and then going to have translation, and then you even want speech to text, so I can ask in a language, right, and it will respond to me in another language, right, and can even have it for low resource, for telecommunications and health. Okay, so my advice to you would be to start with a domain, right? So you can start with a domain, right, at first. Maybe start with telecommunications, one that you are very used to, right? Then do everything you want to do with that telecommunications, right? Start with the QA, the speech to text, text to speech, in low resource for telecommunications, right? So when you are now done with that and it works, right, if you now still have more time, or maybe after the project, right, you can now say, okay, let me now scale this up, right, for health, right? So start with a domain, maybe telecommunications first or health first, anyone you want to use first, before now um scaling up, right? Okay, so Segun is saying a reusable smart water bottle made from 100% recycled ocean plastic. It will have a sensor that tracks users' daily water intake and connects to an app that offers personalized hydration goals. Wow, that is a lot, right? That is a lot. And the sensor part, no, I cannot help you with it, but I'm sure you have the knowledge of that for you to want to work on it. So great one. And I like the part for, I imagine the LLM is going to come in the offering of the personalized hydration goals, and that's excellent. So after putting in, so your data, right, is going to see, your data is going to comprise of the user's daily water intake, right? So once you have information about the user's daily water intake, right, then you'll be able to offer personalized hydration goals, if I'm getting it right, right? Then you'll be able to offer personalized hydration goals, right, to that user. But one thing is, what is going to work at that end, right? That the model will be able to say, okay, oh, so I'm sure you must give it like a prompt, right? If it's not a prompt, some form of document that would say, oh, this is the amount of maybe water that a user needs to take in and so amount of time. If this is not enough, then you have to advise the user to do this and that. So yes, excellent, Segun Bello. How do you use AI for audits, right? Clinton Peter, how do you use AI for audit? So it depends on what you want to audit, right? What you want to audit, is it on paper, right? Right? Is it an hard copy, or is it a soft copy, right, on your computer? So if it's a hard copy, the first thing you want to do is convert it, right, using optical character recognition tools. So after that, based on the goal that you want to achieve, right, that is going to determine you are now going to think that, okay, everything that I've learned and this goal that I want to achieve, right, how can I use what I've learned to achieve it? So it depends on what you want to audit and the goal that you want to get, you want to fulfill, right, on whatever you want to audit. Okay, Oyewumi, okay, so we have just 8 minutes more for this our project discussions. So we even had lots of beautiful ideas like this, and we were shy at first, right, to say it. But it's great to see these lovely ideas. Oyewumi, how can you contact me after the program? Well, I'm on LinkedIn, right? I might not be so active. So that is why you should talk to me now. Shukurat is saying you want to work on care giving plans and guidelines for untrained caregivers. Finding it hard to navigate through the career and employer without giving them proper training. Excellent. I like that. But you know that for you to do that, if you want your app to be usable by everybody, right? If you want your app to be usable by everybody, you'd want to also maybe do it in Nigerian languages and also English, right? But it's a great one. And then of course you are the one that you are going to create the document, right? And then pass it to the model more of RAG, right? So great one. I like that. Excellent. Yes. You want to, Miss Bookie, you want to work on an AI powered football. Miss Bookie wants to work on an AI-powered football scout digest, an AI-driven scout report generator designed to help football scout agents, profile manager quickly make sense of overwhelming player data. That's tricky, right? Because I imagine the data might be in an Excel sheet, right? And it depends on how like voluminous, how large that data is. It might not be possible because you should remember that these Gen AI models, right? These are models, LLMs rather, they have context window, right? So if you are passing a very large data set, right, to it might not work, right? But something you can do, right, something you can think of, right, is that you can also do a research on it. There's something they call text to SQL, right? If you know about SQL, structured query language, right? So when you have that your data, right, you can, instead of having it in, let's say, XLSX or CSV, right? If it's going to be data that is large, right, you can put it in a database, right? And then when the model is in the database, you should, this is like a very great project and Bookie. So if you think of it this way, so put the data in a database. That's if it's very large, right? And then you can prompt the model, right? You can say, oh, what is this? You then, whatever you wrote, your prompt in natural language, yeah, the LLM is going to help you transform it into an SQL query. So once it transforms it into an SQL query, it will now run it against that database, get your results for you, and then give you a natural language response. So in that way, right, the how large the data is none of your concern again, and you will be able to get accurate results. So it's a very nice project, right? If you think of it that way, you have large data sets, and somebody else can even do it also. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be only for football. It might be somewhere else when you have a large structured data. If you have a large structured data, you won't just want to pass it to your model like that, right? The context window can cut it short and you won't be able to get something useful from it, right? Put it in a database, right? And then you could research more on it. You learn basic things about lang chain, right? In the context of this bootcamp. We have just 4 minutes to end these our discussions, right? So you learned about lang chain. Yeah, you could do this easily also with lang chain. And don't worry, trust me, already have the knowledge needed to push things to advanced level. So save that in a database. So once you save it in a database, you are good. Just build your chain network. You see how to do it on LangChain, where you just prompt who is the player with the highest scores, right? Just with that prompt, it will write the SQL query. LLM's function is just to write the SQL query there, then to run it against the database, get the response, and then give you the perfect answer for that. So in a way where you want to deal with large structured data, when I say structured data, data that they are arranged in rows and columns, right? The ones we've been doing for RAG, they are unstructured. We've been using unstructured data, PDF and all. But we want to do something that has arranged in rows and columns, and then you want to get results, right, from it, from asking question. You can follow that route, especially when it's a very large data, right? So you can use that route also. You want to fine tune LLM for low resource languages. Great one, but it depends on what you want to do. You can't just say you want to fine tune an LLM. What do you want the LLM to do? Is it translation? Is it better retrieval? Is it what? So you have to pick a domain and what you want to do to make it easier for you, right? And then you create data for that. You can create data from a lot of places. You can create data from news channels, right? You have different news outlets, websites, online. You can get data from the Bible, from the Quran, right? So it depends, right? You want to build a work study. Oh, we have just 1 minute. Let me see. You want to build a work study for WAEC or JAM. So you have to go and take all those past questions, right? Create one and then you pass it using RAG. I should give you an AI forum you can join. There are lots of them. Of course, I encourage joining communities, right? Because I'm also a product of community. So communities are very, very important, right? So you can join, search for Machine Learning Lagos. We have Machine Learning Lagos. It's a free community, right, where you can learn more about AI, learn more about ML, learn more about anything you want to learn about the machine learning world. So yeah, Machine Learning Lagos is one. And if you are interested in research, you can also join ML Collective. Just search Machine Learning Collective in Nigeria, right? You can join the Nigeria platform on Discord. Another you can join is you can join Cohere, right? If you're interested in research also, and join Cohere. Another you can join is for machine learning. Of course, Data Science Nigeria, they have lots and lots of free um boot camps, um tutorials that they run. Yeah, so you can also join that. I think I'm trying to remember one more. There's a community. I'm trying so hard to remember, but it's not coming to mind now. All right, but I think with those communities, you should be able to also still join other communities from there. So Machine Learning Lagos, ML Collective, are great communities. Yeah, Data Science Nigeria are great communities you can join. Yes, so my LinkedIn is Adejumobi Joshua. All right, now we'll be moving on to what we have to do today. All right, so it's 8 p.m. Let's move on to what we have to do today. Well done, Akinwale, and well done, Ajayi Paul. Okay, Simon, you could just search for Machine Learning Lagos on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you get them. Machine Learning then Lagos. All right, so moving on to what we have to do today. Yesterday, you learned a lot, right? About how to keep whatever AI applications you are building safe, right? And then you looked at how to measure toxicity, right, in these models. So today we'll be moving on to checking how to measure regard, right, for this model, right? How to check for regard, right, for these models. So I'll be connecting to our runtime now. Did you ever wonder when you loaded this data set? Let me ask you that question. Did you wonder when you loaded this data set what are current models like Gemini, GPT are going to give to you, right? Did you wonder? So let's check. Uh, okay, so apart from loading models, right, from Hugging Face, right, we have lots of data sets on Hugging Face. For those of you that are saying you want to fine tune or do something, right, you can always check Hugging Face, right, for the data sets that you need. All right, I'm sure you all have access to this. I won't be really working on the toxicity part because my colleague has done justice to it yesterday. But let's just see, right, out of curiosity, what um this what Gemini model like Gemini will say. So let me copy this prompt. Even the toxicity is not so high, it's in 0.05. Let me use um let me see this one. Um 0.11. I want something toxic. Let me try last time. 0.23. Okay, so let's see what a model like Gemini is going to complete this with. Human beings, even depraved ones who so let me share this tab instead. Okay, I won't say that completion is very, it's not toxic. It doesn't look toxic. Let's look for something else to see because you used GPT-2 yesterday. I'm just curious, right, of what these models like Gemini would say, right? And it would have been nice to use them here, but we do not have a paid API key for Gemini. Let me see this one. Fearing negative press over accusations of racism. They showed it in France. So I'm trying to copy another prompt right now because I'm sure you're still seeing my Gemini screen. Negative press over accusations of racism. They showed it in France and the UK and on certain US. It says I'm referring to the distribution and reception of a French comedy. It's even told after the protest talking about the race in France. So here the model is not really giving, just telling me real sources, right, about what it thinks should be the completion. But I feel it might also have a little bit of hallucination because fearing negative presses over accusation of racism, they showed it in France. Well, it's just trying to complete it, right, and showing what it knows that was showed in France and in the UK. Well, great one. Because of our time, we won't be checking all of these fronts, but you can check it on your own, right? And then see the kind of response that would be it will be completed with, right? On models like on UIs like GPT, Gemini, or Claude. But moving on to what we have to do today, you learned a lot yesterday about how to keep your model safe, right? How to stop the model from, we've learned so much rather about how to stop, reduce is the right word, please, how to reduce hallucinations, right, in model. And we know that sometimes this model might misinform, right, the user. That is why anything you are using generative models for, right, you should be able to place safeguards, right, in whatever you are doing. That is why somebody that said the other time that, oh, you want to build a model to help you with treatment protocols. No, because you cannot put these generative models to tell somebody how to treat, right, themselves, right. Fine, it might give correct outputs a lot of times, but at some times, right, it might just give a wrong response and it would cost somebody their life. So on things like that, right, misinform, hallucinate, right, we do not want, and the model in that kind of way rather can cause harm, right, which we do not want in our society. So this is to also remind us that in anything we are building with generative AI applications, right, we should always put safeguards there, safeguards, put limits, right, to what the model can answer, put limits to what the model can work on, which is why somebody that was talking about, I think, the model answering questions, right, about, I think it was hospitality the other time. I was saying that yes, for very frequently asked questions, you can gather them together in a knowledge base and then pass it to your model. But for questions that has not been encountered before, right, in that kind of scenario, you want to say, if the questions, right? The model cannot find an answer to the question in the database, then it should refer, right? There is a way you do the pipeline such that will be referred to somebody, a human being, a human in the loop, right, in the company, so that the model will not just start hallucinating and giving wrong response. So the main importance of this notebook, right, is to teach you how to check for harm, right? The model might give harmful responses, harmful completion. So how do you measure this, right, in large language models? So yesterday you've learnt about toxicity, right, to measure how toxic, right, whatever the completion of the model, right, how toxic it is. So now we'll be looking at so let me rerun some cells that will be useful for us today. So we are using GPT-2. That's the model you used yesterday, and then we'll continue to use that today also. I'll be rerunning the toxicity part, right? I'll be moving on to, yeah, evaluating regard. So yesterday, you all know about toxicity, right? How toxic, right? The output of the model is given a specific prompt. But regard checks for the model's perception, right, of a demographic group, right? What is that model's perception of a demographic group? So you can use it to measure bias, right, towards a demographic. So is the model always giving more negative responses to females as opposed to male, or vice versa? Or does the model hate Africans, right, as opposed to Americans, right? So what is that um result, right? So we can do that, we can measure that, right, with regard. So we're using our data set, a bold data set. So it was created to evaluate fairness, right, in open-ended language generation. So we have different domains here in the bold data sets. We would also be loading it from Hugging Face. We have different domains: the profession, gender, race, religions, ideologies, and then political ideologies, right? So we'll be loading our bold data sets and then I'll run it. Are you still going to have access to the YouTube platform you meant to say after the bootcamp? Well, I think our admin should be able to um respond to that. My screen is stuck on Gemini. Thank you for telling me that. All right, so I'll share my collab screen and then I'll zoom in. So I'm sure it should not be um blurry again. My screen is static. I'm sure you should be seeing evaluating regard now, right? Okay, excellent. Excellent. So I'm talking about regard, right? Which is a metric, right, to measure social perceptions of a demographic group. So we're using a data set, a bold data set that has 5 different domains: profession, gender, race, religious ideologies, political ideologies, right? And then if we look at what is contained in this bold data set, you can see we have domain, the name, categories, prompts, and then Wikipedia. So the first one we'll be doing, right, is that we'll be checking since the gender domain, fine. So we want to pick 50 samples, right, from that data set. So from our data set, the whole data set above, we want to pick 50 samples for females and then 50 samples for males, 50 prompt samples for males, right? So you can see what we have in the first entry, right, of this. For the one for male, we have the domain is gender, of course, the name, the prompt is saying, Philip, this is an Hong Kong born. So the prompt is a list, right, which is showing us that we have more than one, we can have more than one entry, right, in a list. But for the purpose of this demo, we'll only be taking the first entry, right, of this prompt list. So let's see what's in the female one also. So copy this, and in a new cell, Control C, then click on code, right? In the new cell, we put the female. Let's see what's in the female part. Yeah, so yeah, for this list, we only have one item there. So for it to be consistent throughout, we'll be picking only the first item, right, in the list. Yeah, so that's what this next cell is saying. We're only going to pick the first prompt, right, in each list. And notice that we have already reduced our samples, right, to 50 here. Right. So here we are just saying you want to pick the first item, right, in each of those prompt lists. Okay. Excellent. So that is why if we do length of male prompts, let's do length of male prompts. So we know how many prompts do we have in that male prompt list, right? You can see we have 50. We do same for females also. You see that we have 50 also. So we did this yesterday, right? We did this. We are using our text generation to pass our prompts, right, to our model, which we have defined above, right? If you remember very clearly, we are using GPT-2, right? And then this is our prompt, and then we are even putting the maximum length of what we want as our output. Do sample equal to false is saying that it's tokens that it's going to pick will be more deterministic, and this pad token ID, right, it's more of the end of string token, right? So every most models, not all, right, have their end of string token, and it is definitive, right? It is what's the right word now? It is like this, right? It is stable, it can't change, it is this. So you don't have to worry about the number. It doesn't change. The end of string doesn't change. So here we do not want the prompts that we are putting in. I'm sure you did the same thing yesterday. We do not want the prompts that we are putting in to show, right, in our results, in our generated text. That is why you can see that we are replacing prompt with an empty string. And then for every result we get that the model says is the continuation for our prompt, right, we are we are passing it to this list, append, right? It will always put it in the last place, right, of the list. Then once you run this, so it keeps running and running and running. So once it's done running, I would also do the same for female continuations, and then allow it as male, and then where the gender is female. Right. So once it's done with that, then we'll be able to now calculate the regard, look at the perception, right, of that model towards, oh, when the um says it's a come that will come to your mind is what if I want to measure toxicity, right, of whatever my model is outputting. Uh, do I have to go and get a data set like this bold? Let me see the data set that one. Yes, we use this real toxicity prompt, right? So you do not really have to, no, you do not even have to go and start looking for a real toxicity prompt, right? If you are trying to use it for your own this prompt that I'm giving to my model, right? On this specific prompt, right? Is it outputting a toxic response, right? You could just keep this toxic loading data set part, and then just move on to creating your own prompt, right? Create it in a very JSON structure, right? Or put it in a list rather. We are used to a list. So put it in a list, and then you will just come to this part, right? For prompts and prompts, do your text generation, pass your prompts, right, which is in a list, to your model, and then you'll be library to see how toxic. So this measurement here is saying that fine, it is your prompt, right? But you do not have to provide a ground truth, right? And when we say ground truth, when we were doing translation, right? So I'm just talking through this because of what is still currently running. So when we were doing translation, when we wanted to calculate our blue score, we were like, oh, we would give the original human translation and then look at it with whatever the model is saying and then compare the two. So in that scenario, the human translation is the ground truth, right? The response that we are expecting. But in this one, since the model type is measurement, right, you don't need to provide any ground truth, right? The model's response, right? And the default model being used in the background is this. So this model has been really, really fine-tuned, right, to evaluate responses for toxicity. So you as the human being, you don't need to provide any ground truth and say, oh, is the response this or that if you are using it this way. So yeah, I'm just trying to explain. Okay, it's done running. I'll go back to it soon. I'm just trying to explain how you would evaluate the if a model is being giving you toxic completions with your prompts. How would you do that on your own prompts, right? Not with a data set. So we are using a data set here to just show you how to do that. But if there's a scenario where you have your own set of prompts, you created your own set of prompts in like a list, right? You could just always move on to pick the model that you want. Of course, you've been taught how to use varieties of model, right? Just go to Hugging Face Up and pick a text generation model that is capable of text generation. Pick the model. You can even do this as your project, right? We've been looking for different projects since. You could do this as your project also, right? It's also a great one. See how different models, if you have an API key for like OpenAI or Gemini, right? Or open source models or Hugging Face that we've been using, right? You could um create your own prompt, put in the model that you want, and then just come to the for prompts in toxic prompts, then pass your prompts and then get your responses from your model and then evaluate, right? Using evaluate. How toxic, right? Just have to load it and then you evaluate how toxic, right? Um the response is, right? That's if you want to do it on your own prompt without a data set. Because anytime I'm taught to use something with a data set, I usually wonder, oh, what if I want to use it with my own, right, data set, or let's say another data set, right? How would that work? So that is something you can do. So back to our regard measurements, right, which we said helps us to measure the social perception of a model towards a demographic. So we've loaded our bold data sets. Same thing you can also do here, right? So we have some prompts, right? You can even create it, right? Some prompts for females and then some prompts for males, right? So just like here, we've been able to create 50 prompts. So if we look at, let's even see the first 5 entries of this list. So you can see, right? So let's say you create a prompt like this on your own, male one and then a female prompt. So you just come here next, right? So run the prompt on the model and then get your, oh sorry, I already ran it. Why am I running it again? All right, so we already ran that. I need that to complete again. Okay, then the next thing you want to do is just to calculate the regard, right? So want to evaluate the bias gender, male and then female. So want to compare it. I know measurements here means that we don't need like a grand truth and a answer that we're expecting on our own. So while that is still taking time to run, let me see if there are any pending questions that I have not responded to. Oh, sorry about that. My audio was breaking. Wow. Christian, if the cells are taking a lot of time to, are you using is your run at my own run time here, right? I changed it to what those ones are above, right? On your own end, but you would have this T4 right? So just change it to this T4 and it should work faster. Long time, right? So that is what Jumoke is also telling you. Great one. It seems, yeah. So you're using GPT-2, right? If you want it to run faster, connect it to your T4 GPU. But if you're using CPU, it's going to be slow and take a lot of time. I think like 20 to 30 minutes if you are running it on a CPU. All right, so I'm coming back here and it's time to evaluate, right? Okay, it's done loading our measurements. Mm-hmm. So now I want to look at the difference between the two genders. So we are picking a random samples, right? So if you come here, when we started 50, yeah, so we picked 50 random samples. So whatever we have in the texts right below might not correspond to what you would get, right? Because the samples are different, right, every time. Okay, so now want to look at the difference between the continuations, right, that the model gave. So now this is open-ended. Now for the toxicity that we checked yesterday, it's open-ended, right? You're checking, oh, the completion that the model is giving to whatever prompts you have, how toxic it is, right? Today we are checking for regard. We are saying, oh, based on the different demographics that we have, what is the social perception, right, of this model, right? Is it biased to one group and not biased to the other, right? So that is what we are checking today. Note that this is for open-ended. One question you might have is, what if it's for, let's say, a question answering how would you measure bias when we have questions and an answer? In that kind of one, we have ground truths. Let's say you want to measure bias for, oh, should the model hire this person? Yes or no? Yes, the model will say yes, hire. No, don't hire. In that kind of one too, we can have um ground truth because we have a specific thing that we're expecting. But for these continuations, they are open-ended, right? We don't have any response that we are saying, okay, the model can be very, very creative with whatever it wants to give, right? So now let's look at the different. Before we look at the difference, right, let's look at some of the outputs, right, for the continuations. So let's see. So we are looking at the prompts. So the prompt given was, for the male one was Gabriel. We have 50 different prompts, right? So we are just looking at just one out of them in that list. So Gabriel Diamond Legacy is a prompt, right? And then the continuation was, who has been part of this is a member of that, and that is the continuation. So let's see for female. Jessica is an American. Then it is saying Japanese, Vietnamese, whatever. Okay, let's check for the two. First two. So the prompt is Maribel Hill is an American actress, and if you check the next list, don't get confused. The model is not saying and a producer, she is best known for her role as the voice of the character in the film, and that is all. There's a comma next. So the next prompt is now saying April 30, 2008 was Margaret Cho's. Then the girl who lived, she also has appeared in several films, including and that. So that is the continuation it gave, right, for that specific prompt. So what regard is now checking is saying, oh, the continuation that the model gave, right, for that prompt, right, is it positive? Is it negative, right? Or is it just neutral? So that is what regard is going to help us check. Now, it is now going to check also for the males. Given this set of prompts, the continuation that the model gave, right? Is it positive? Is it negative? Or is it neutral? So that is what we are checking, right? With regard when we are comparing the two different continuations, right? That we got for two different demographic groups. So here, this is what we are trying to do. So let me run this again. So this is saying when we compare the male continuations to the female continuations, right? You know, when you are doing normal arithmetic, right? And let's say they said the male has, on average, the male has 6 oranges, right? And then on average, the female has 8 oranges, right? They are comparing the male versus the female. That's 6 minus 8, right? If they are doing a difference, that will be -2, right? Which is telling me that the female has more oranges, right, than the male, right? Notice male is coming first. Male is the one that has 6, and female is the one that has 8, right? And we are having -2, which is saying the female has more oranges than the male. Right? But let's say in another instance where the male has 10 oranges and then the female has just 2 oranges, right? In that kind of case, we'll be having a positive, right? 10 minus 2, say 8, right? The male has more oranges than female. So it also applies to here. The data is the male continuations and we are referencing it to the female continuations. So the neutral is telling you that what? The negative is telling you that what? I'm coming to look at your response in the chat. This, which is positive, is telling us what? Our positive is telling us what? Neutral is telling us what? Negative is telling us what? And positive, right? Which has a positive score also is telling us what? Okay, I can see that we are not responding yet. To save our time, I'll tell you the response. So the female continuations, right, is telling the bigger difference, right, is telling us that, oh, amongst the prompts, right, for the female, among the continuations for the prompts for the female, right, the model gave more neutral continuations, right, for the females than males. So it gave more neutral continuations for the females than males, and then more negative, though it's not as much, 0 point slightly, I'll say slightly more, even slightly more neutral because we can see 0.00, 0.0, so slightly more negative continuations for female, slightly more neutral for female, and then slightly more positive for male, right? So since male is the data and then female is the reference, if it is negative, it means it is more, right, for female. That's why you can say negative response. But if it is slightly positive, meaning it is more positive rather for male continuations. All right, and then if you are putting an average, right? If you are putting an average there, an average is saying that you now want to check the regard scores, right, for each of the different groups. Now you are not even doing difference again. You know this one is doing the difference between, oh, on average, what is the neutral score for male continuations? Oh, on average, what is the neutral score for female continuations? What is the difference between those neutral scores? You put it here. What is the difference between those negative scores? You put it here. What is the difference between those positive scores? You put it there. But now this one is now saying, oh, on average, whenever you put in this last aggregation part, which is average. So this one is saying, on average, right, what is the neutral score for male? What is the one negative for male? And then what is the positive for male? Then the next one is saying, on average, the reference, what is the positive, what is the negative, and what is the neutral. So easily, if you look at these two, let's look at the positive. So the positive for male is saying 0.6, right? And then the positive for female is saying 0.59. And I'm sure that here, if we do a subtraction, 0.6 minus 0.59, you can see that the male, right, is more positive than the female, which is why you don't have a negative number in this difference, right? And then if you look at the neutral for, meaning the number of neutral, the score rather for neutral continuations that we have for male, right? 0.27. For neutral continuations, we have 0.27 for male on average, and then 0.29 for female. So you can see that the one for female is more than the one for, we had more neutral continuations for females than we had for male, right? So that is why when you now scroll up to the difference, right, you can see that we are having what? A negative number, right? Because the female one is more than the male, right? And then let's also see the one for the negative. The negative for male is saying 0.07, and then the one for female is saying 0.08, right? So because the regard score, right, for negative for female is more than the one for male, that is why you can see it being having a minus sign here, right? So this one is telling us that, oh, based on the prompts, right, that we put in, based on the prompts that we put in, the continuation, right, the model is having more positive continuations, sorry, slightly more positive continuation rather for male as opposed to female, and then it is having slightly more negative continuations based on the different prompts for the separate groups, right, for females as opposed to male, right? So based on the prompts that we chose. If you choose another set of prompts, let's say another sample, run another sample, you might have a different result on your end, right? you will even have a different result on your end, because I'm sure the same sample that I have here is not the same sample that you get when you are running it on your end. So it depends on the sample of prompts chosen. That is what will determine the kind of continuations that the model will give. And then we can now say, oh, which is more neutral, which is more negative, which is more positive, which is what we can see here. So we can say, oh, is the model more biased to females, or it is more biased to males, or it is this and that, right? So that is a way to do this with evaluate. You can also try out another domain, right? So instead of trying out um only the gender part, right? You can also try out the one for race, right? The one for race. I'm sure you don't have this before in your notebook. So you can type what you can see on your screen, right? So you can type what you can see on your screen. This is the one for race. So you can filter, right, for race. Look at the different categories, right, that you have for race. Then do this, and then you will not do everything that we did for gender. Just redo it on your own, and then see, oh, when you pick two races, right, which is it giving more positive continuations for, which is it giving more negative continuations for, and then which is it giving more neutral continuations for. So I'll wait for you to finish typing what we have for race, and then you can always complete that on your end. Okay, I can see that most of us are not aligning with what we have for today. So let me explain it to you in a simple way, right? So here, what we are just trying to do is to check, is this model biased, right, based on the prompts that it is given. Yesterday, we checked for, oh, is this model giving us toxic outputs? Is this model giving, when you say this and that, is the completion that the model is giving you, is it toxic? That is what we checked for yesterday. Now, today, we are now checking, oh, based on this prompt, right, is this model biased towards a specific group when it is person is a male or when the person is a female? That's the first thing. Is this model biased when the person is a male or when this person is a female? And what we mean by that, we say, when we give the model a prompt, right, is it when it is completing that prompt, right, is it giving more positive response when the gender of the person is a female, or is it giving more negative response when the gender of the person is a female? Same thing, is it giving more negative response when gender of the person is a male, or is it giving more positive response, right, when the gender of the person is a male, right? And the first thing we did is just to get data set, right? And this our data set just consists of prompts that we want to now pass to our model. Right. So when we have the prompts that we want to pass to our model, the prompts are contained in this data set. You can see the prompts here, right? So we extract only the first item, right? Some prompts have more than one item in the list, but we only extract the first item, right, from that list to now create our own list of prompts, right? So after we now have those prompts, we have different ones for males, and then we also have a different set of prompts for females. Different set of prompts for male, and then different set of prompts for female. So all we just did is now to now pass, just pass the prompt, right, to our model. You did this yesterday. So just pass that prompt, right, those 50 prompts, right, pass it. That's why you can see a for loop here, right? For each of those prompts, we are passing it to our model and then say, oh, what will this model complete it with, right? What will this model complete it with? Is it a positive thing or a negative completion? Now, after now getting our continuations, right, we now want to use this measurement, right, named regard. It will help us say, oh, the continuations, right, the continuations for when we have just male prompt, right, the how neutral it is, right, is this, how negative is this, how much more positive it is this. Oh, when the prompts are female focused, oh, this is how positive it is, this is how neutral it is, and this is how negative it is. We now want to see, oh, is the model giving us more neutral continuations um for female? We'll check neutral for male versus neutral for female. Average reference, notice average reference and the data, right? Notice that data here is male, reference here is female, right? What's the difference, right, between the neutral for male rather, and then the neutral for female? Oh, what's the difference between the negative for male and then the negative for female, right? So we are just looking at if there's any difference, right, in how wow, so you cannot hear me anymore. Wow, no sound. Please confirm if you can hear me. Oh, so Segun Bello, please, you want to check your at on your end. What do we mean by toxic? Omotayo Esther, I assume that we've done this yesterday in your class. Okay, so when we say the model is giving toxic response, right, it's completing whatever prompt you have, right, giving harmful response, right? So that's what you mean by toxic. How harmful, right? Or how maybe we have swear words, right? Toxic. How maybe have swear words in whatever the model is responding you with, or there's a threat there or something, right? So that is why yesterday when you checked for the toxicity, you could see different things there, right? But today we are not doing the toxic part, right? We are measuring that, oh, when we are looking at different prompts, right? When we look at different prompts, and then some prompts are majorly female focused. If there's one thing that you take away from this class, just make sure it's this, right? We are not focusing on the toxicity part today. We are focusing on the bias part, right? If there's one thing you take away from this class, note that what we are doing here with regard, right, is to check that, okay, if these prompts, we have a list of prompts, some are male focused and then some are female focused, right? So we are now saying that for the male ones that are male focused, right, whenever we pass the prompt to the model and it is giving us its response back, right, how positive is that response, how negative is that response, how neutral is that response, as opposed to whenever we are giving it a prompt that is female focused, right, how negative is that prompt, how positive is that prompt, and how neutral is that prompt. Regard difference in how help us check, oh, is the model giving more positive response, right, for male focus prompt, or it is giving more positive response for female focus prompt, or vice versa. So that is what disregard, right? If that's one thing you will learn from today's class, you can always go through the code later on your own, but that is the main um storyline, right, behind what regard, right, is helping you to do. And then we've been able to do the one for male versus female in the class. I'm saying there are other domains there, right, that you can always check, right? There are other domains like race, right? You can check, oh, whenever the prompts they are, let's say, American focused, right? What kind of response is the model giving? Is it giving more positive or more negative or more neutral? Oh, whenever the prompts are African focused, right? Is the response from the model giving more positive or negative or neutral? So regard will now help you look at, oh, the regard difference now help you look at, oh, for Africans, oh, it is more positive, or for Americans, oh, it is giving more negative prompt, right? So that is what regard helps you to do. And then toxicity that you learned yesterday just helped you to measure, oh, how toxic is that model's response? Does it contain threats? Does it contain swear words? And then does it contain things that can be harmful or make the user feel bad, right? That is what toxicity measures. And all these are very, very open-ended, right, responses. So you can always go over today's video to rewatch so that you understand what you have been taught better, and then you can always run for other categories, right? Run for other categories in that data set. So congratulations, that brings us to the end of the 8 weeks boot camp. Yeah, I hope you have learned a lot as I have done also in this uh, class. What's the purpose of bias? What's the purpose of this bias model checking? Excellent, Christian. So now this one that we checked now is just for open-ended questions, right? When we are given a prompt and then we get a response from the model and we just want to say, oh, is this response from this model, is it toxic? We've checked, we've seen how to do that. Oh, is this response from this model, is it favoring a particular demographic group than the other, right? We've seen how to do that for open-ended questions. Now, in a closed-ended questions, let's say I have some set of question and answer, and I'm also going to give you different scenarios that this can be useful. Excellent, Esther. So as I was explaining to you, Christian, right? So yeah, I was trying to say, let's say we have some set of question and answer, right? Let's say we have 50 questions and answer. And then I told the model that, oh, I'm a female, right? I've answered the question. And then I told the model to grade me. I am a female that answered this, and that. Please grade my responses, right, to these 50 questions. Let's say the model said I got 20 out of 50. That's my score. And then another person came. This time around, let's even say with the same response that me, that I am the female, that I gave, right? And then this person says, I'm a man, please check this model should rate this my responses. And then the model can say this person is getting 30 out of 50, right? So in that kind of way, the model is biased because even though we have I thought all this you've been taught all this yesterday, right? Because I know there were slides that you've been also all this has been explained to you. But I'll just briefly go over them again, right? Because to understand it better. So in that kind of scenario, the model is favoring a particular demographic group over another, right? And in that kind of scenario, we'll say in that kind of scenario, right, we'll say the model is being biased because that should not happen. Look at them giving the same set of answers, and then the model is favoring saying, oh, this one is getting 20, right? This one is getting 30, right? Now we are even now holding whatever answer I'm giving to the model, we are holding it constant there and then just changing the gender, right, to be able to say, okay, this model only gave us a different response because the gender changed, right? So another scenario, I'm coming back to the purpose, but I'm giving you the scenario so that you can start thinking of the purpose on your own. Another scenario can be in resumes, right? You know, most times in today's world, today's job world, right, you would people use a lot of models, right, to screen resumes and say, check if this participant or this applicant rather passes the minimum score or something, right? And let's say I am a girl, I have a some set of experience and all. And let's say I have the same resume, right, with a man, right? And then the model says, my resume is good and passes the test. And then the model rejects that of the man, even though we have basically the same thing, right, in our resume. In that kind of scenario, it is bad because in that kind of scenario, right, it is bad because the model is not being fair and the model is being biased to a specific group. I don't want to use the word biased again. The model is not favoring rights, it's favoring a specific group higher than another group, right? So we want the model, right, to give the same, if not the same, right, not two different response, right? And if the model response is even going to change, let it be because of the content of that resume in the case of the resume scenario, not because the gender changed, right? So it should be because of the content, right, not because the gender change. So the purpose of checking for bias, right, in models is that when these models are deployed, right, in the real world scenario, the model in will not be affecting a particular demographic, right, inappropriately, or will not be um reducing access, that can be the word, that a particular demographic should have. So you have to test your model that, okay, is this model not favoring this group more than another group? Or is this model not favoring a, let's say, an African now? It's favoring, let's say the model is favoring Americans more than the model is favoring a person from Africa. So in that kind of things that you are supposed to get even though you are an African and you are as qualified as that person that is from America is, right, you will not be able to get it in that kind of scenario. So you'd have limited access, right, in that kind of scenario because the model was biased, right? So you have to always check for bias, right, whenever you are um not just bias, right? Bias is just a part of safety. You've been taught most of explained my colleague has explained, I think, most of it to you yesterday, right? You must check that the model is not hallucinating, is not misinforming the user, right? Those are part of AI safety, right? There are different terms, right, under safety, making sure that the model is giving fair response, right, to different demographics, right, and then it is not giving inappropriate response because this person is from this demographic group. Oh, then no, I cannot give this person this thing because this person is from this demographic group, not that because this person is not good enough. Exactly. So if we translate it to what we've learned, right? Toxicity, right, is something you can also check. It's saying, oh, this model should not give toxic responses, right? Depending on the prompt, right? And then the regard that we learned today is saying that, oh, the model should not give more positive continuations, right, to some um to a demographic, right, than it should give to another, right? So it should majorly the response of the, how will I explain it to you? The percentage, right, of whatever positiveness it is given to male should be similar or very close to what it will give to the female. It should not be too different. So it won't be like, oh, the model is favoring females and it is not favoring male, or the major is favoring male and it is not favoring females, or the model rather is favoring black and it is not favoring whites. So Christian, you are saying that so it will enable you to choose a model for a particular task and for a specific purpose. No. To choose a model for a particular task, that is not biased, right? To choose a model for a particular task, you will think of the task you want to do. Is it text generation? Is it speech to text? Is it video? Is it whatever task you want to do, right? And that will determine what you want to, the model that you want to pick for your task. But if you now want to check, oh, is the response of this task, right? Is the response that my model is giving for this task, is the response toxic, right? Is the response favoring a particular demographic group than it is favoring another? Then you would want to check for bias for that, or toxicity. If you are saying, oh, this response for my model, is it toxic, right? When you are even using it on that task. So that is it. But for what you said, no, a very big no. All right, so I hope we all understand it a bit. And if you do not understand it fully, please endeavor to watch the recording. I'm sure you understand it. You've been taught the basic things, right, that you need, right, to um, fully understand what we have in the notebook. Okay, so I can see Christian saying, what if it is? What if what is Christian? Please, if you are referring to what you said before, no, no, right. You're not choosing a you're not using bias to choose the model that you want to pick for a particular task and for a specific purpose, right? So it is the goal of what you want to achieve that is going to say, okay, this is the model that I want to pick, this is the model that I want to pick, or that, right? So when you've picked based on the goal that you've been taught from week 1 to week 2, week 3 up to week 8. If you want to do text generation or summarization or question answering, right, you will first think of the model that you want to use to do that, right? If you want to do translation, right, you won't think of bias first. You will first think of what you want to achieve, right? The goal you want to achieve. Then once you've thought of that, you think of, oh, should I do few shot? Should I do chain of thought prompting or zero shot? Or should I fine tune, even though that was not covered in this class? Yeah. So after you've thought of that and then you know how to achieve your task, then when you now get your response, you can now check, oh, is this response that I'm getting right? Is it going to be biased against the demographic group? Is this response that I'm getting, is it toxic, right? So that is where bias will now come in, not that it will enable you to choose a model for a task. So I hope you understand that now, Christian. All right, so that brings us to the end of the AI Now Bootcamp 2025, right? So thank you all for staying from week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, and this is week 8, the final class for today. So I hope you have enjoyed the class, and I hope to see wonderful projects that we have discussed earlier that you would work on. So thank you all for joining the class from week 1 up to week 8. We are grateful for joining and for engaging, right? For making the class a very interactive class. Thank you all and God bless you. Bye.